Welcome, everyone, to People on Dating. I'm your host, Will Morales. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this podcast is about the ups and downs of dating and how to navigate through it. Today, my guest is Dr. Danica Harris. Dr. Harris was trained as a therapist and currently operates as a coach and somatic experiencing practitioner, and is the emphatic voice behind the popular Instagram account, The Empowered Therapist. She is the co-owner of the Empowered Healing Dallas, a social justice informed therapy practice in Dallas, Texas, focusing on providing trauma-informed mental health services. Danica, thank you so much for being on People Dating. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What was that journey like to get to, coaching? You have the, you're doing this, you're the co-owner of the Empowered Healing Dallas. What was that journey like? What was that aha moment for you?
Yeah, I went to so I started graduate school, I think in 2010, if I remember correctly. I've been seeing clients since 2011, and I really knew that I wanted to help people heal. That was something that felt very important to me. It remains important to me. And through my graduate training, seeing clients, I started specializing in trauma, both because I am a trauma survivor myself, and also I found myself really aligned with that work, and I felt not only passionate but skilled in supporting people on their healing journey. So fast forward, I get through school. I was actually working as a professor in a graduate program training therapists, and I really loved that work, but was finding myself wanting to be in the clinical side of things. And so a colleague of mine who I worked with at a previous setting, we came together and we agreed we wanted to open a practice. So we opened Empowered Healing Dallas in 2019, January of 2019. And it was just the two of us. We had no aspirations to have a group practice. And today we have a group of 20 clinicians, a full-time practice manager. Yeah, and we also have a second business, The Empowered Therapist, where her and I both, and a couple other folks host healing focused retreats. I do somatic experiencing coaching over there. I have a support program for therapists. We do healing intensives and all sorts of stuff. So we've got our therapy business, where we mentor therapists who support our community in Texas and a number of other states in the U.S. And then her and I do our healing focus work in this other business as well.
You're a very busy woman. I
I,
don't know.
that I am.
I
Yeah.
don't know how you keep track of everything. So that's impressive. And today's a good subject, right? Finding healthy and safe relationships. And it seems like in 2026, and especially more after uh, the COVID, it seems like relationships are not as healthy as it was before COVID, and even maybe early 20 in the 2010, 2015, around there. It seems like what I'm seeing and reading is like men and women are, seems like they're competing, especially more men are competing with women, because what I'm reading, women are going, more of them going to college, graduating with degrees, starting their own business and things like that. Are you seeing that, Dr. Danica, that the relationships between a man and a woman is not the same like it used to be?
I think I don't even know what is the same, right? I'm using air quotes here. I think we are all always evolving all the time, right? And we're influenced by the greater cultural conversations that are occurring. One of the things that I think is happening, and I see this more generationally, even folks now that Gen Z are adults, and those folks are navigating adult relationships for the first time, just in the last few years. I really think generationally we're seeing a difference. I think people, men and women alike, are really considering what do they want out of a relationship, what do they want out of a partner, and I do believe that is drastically changing the landscape of relationships. And I think that specifically looks really different today than it did a decade ago. I think people are evaluating relationships and attachment and their needs and connection in just really different ways.
So, because again, when I'm reading and I see other podcasters and other shows and everything, um, again, I don't know how true the statistic is. They say more and more men are opting out of dating because they can't maybe meet a woman's standards. I know some women, in my circle, they're professionals. It's the type of woman that I like to hang out with because I don't mind learning from a woman. I have the ego is definitely not involved, but I'm seeing that men are not doing that.
Mhm.
It's like they're fighting tooth and nail to still maintain their own autonomy, but I think we both need each other. I listen, whether it's a friend or a family member, I want a woman in my life. Does that make sense? What I just said?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I see this in the work that I'm doing. So early on when I like started working as a therapist, I worked almost exclusively with men. That was just
Mm-hmm.
kind of on accident of the places that I worked in and the populations I saw. So the first kind of portion of my career was working with men, and now I'm like almost exclusively working with women. And it's interesting to kind of hear the different ways that like the way we're socialized, like that influences, the way men are socialized, the way women are socialized, that influences how we think about relationships, talk about relationships, what we want from relationships. And like what I would say I'm hearing a lot of now from the women that I work with is feeling like they have these expectations of a male partner that, I mean, are like equity driven. Like, I want a partner who shows up as a partner, right? And what they're finding routinely, and this is certainly not to say like every man all the time, but what they're finding is that they're not being met with that same equity mindset. They're being met with someone who like maybe believes like, oh, I'm the man, so therefore I should be in charge or something like that. And I think that that is an out, and I think about this from that generational perspective. I think that's an outdated perspective. And I think that sometimes people will like struggle to let go of a perspective they were given in childhood or a cultural norm, if you will. And I think a lot of women are really wanting like equal partnership and equity in relationships. And I think there are some cultural messages lingering for men that make that difficult sometimes.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree 100%. I know there's some, nobody wants to let go, especially when you get older, you kind of set in your ways, in my opinion. But going back to finding a healthy and safe relationship, what does that look like? Is it, a 50-50 type of relationship? Or is it where, some women are always looking for, now, that's emotionally intelligent and, they have someone they could talk to, someone maybe not solve their problem, but just someone to, have an outlet of release.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what we're looking for now in the 2020s?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? That
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah. I've seen some of the like couples therapists, researchers talk about like it's less about 50-50 and more about 100-100. Like, are we both showing up with our full and complete selves to this relationship? And I think if we like, if we go back like even to the 1950s, right? Like there was a very different gendered dynamic in relationships than even could exist today or that people want to exist today, and I know I'm speaking somewhat in generalities here, but like, today almost everyone has to work to be able to support themselves, their lives, that sort of thing. And I think women were not permitted in the workspace in the same way in the 50s that they are today. So I think that's like a really good progression, right? Like where women have more agency and autonomy and choice. And I think that all of that then influences like, okay, well, if I am a woman looking for a male partner and I'm showing up and I'm doing all this work both outside of the house, in the house, and I'm emotionally available, I want that in a partnership too. And I think that that's where we're seeing some delay, right? Like, not that men can't be emotionally available, but to be fair, they're not always socialized to be emotionally available. Little boys are taught messages like, oh, don't cry, or like toughen up, or be a man. Like at such a young age, we kind of, socialize the emotionality right out of young boys. I hope that's changing. I hope that that's not going to be the same for upcoming generations. But I think that that's part of the struggle. If a person is wanting, if anyone is wanting an emotionally available partner, and someone feels like emotionally less capable or less available, that's gonna rub in a really critical way.
It's funny that you say that about, if a man, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but basically just if a man is feeling a certain way to talk to his woman, girlfriend, wife, whatever, I'm seeing now that, or I'm hearing that men don't want to be that vulnerable because they say certain women will use it against them. And that's happened to me once or twice, but I wouldn't generalize that at all. Do you think that's maybe the pushback for some guys that they don't want to like really let go of their feelings because they might be used against them down the road if there's a some type of fight, not physical fight, but some type of
Mhm.
disagreement in the relationship?
Sure. I mean, I think I think when anyone has to take the risk or is considering taking the risk to be vulnerable, fear is a likely response to that. Like
Right.
and I think that's true again, independent of gender. Like no matter what, like if I share vulnerably with you, I'm taking a risk on you to get it right?
Yeah.
And with men, if they've had less experience of that, that fear is going to be stronger. Or
Mhm.
if they've had an experience of it where they have been vulnerable with someone and then someone has misused that, then I think that really kind of forces us inward. And we see that a lot with like folks who have like more avoidant attachment. Like they'll be a little bit more withdrawn relationally, men or women or, any gender identity. They might be a little bit more withdrawn as opposed to being present and available because there's that fear of like, well, if I'm vulnerable, you might hurt me, or if I'm vulnerable, you might use it against me.
So how do we get past that though? Is that where, like you said, finding a healthy and safe relationship is just obviously it's about trusting each other and having the communication. But if
Mhm.
we're both going into a relationship where she doesn't want to, say certain things, and I don't want to say certain
Yep.
things, what kind of communication are we going to have then? Is it just going to be, yeah, how was your day? How was your day? And
Yep.
how are we going
Yeah.
to move forward as a couple? So I think
Yeah.
that's the fear, right, from both sides. Am I
Sure.
getting that
Yep.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's a good point. Like, how do we still have depth in a relationship when fear is present?
Yeah.
And I think one of the ways we do that, and something I think about, like, well, even when you and I were like initially talking, like how does someone find a safe and healthy relationship? And I would make the argument like we start with ourselves and not that like old trope of like you have to love yourself before you can love someone else. Not like that. But like in order for me to feel safe in a connection with anyone, I have to trust that I can navigate whatever's in front of me. So the healthy relationship really does need to be tended to inward first,
Okay.
and then like okay, so like in your example, okay, I'm afraid to open up and maybe someone else is afraid to open up. How do we then bridge that gap? Well, it's by taking small and measured risks. So
Yeah.
I it's kind of like a relational dance, right? I take a little risk, they take a little risk, and we kind of just navigate it and
Okay,
create
so it's
that
building.
depth.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah,
no,
take
that
the
makes
depth
sense.
together.
It's just because I think in relationships where when it works, it works. It just feels comfortable that you have someone you could talk to, someone you could rely on, someone that you could call when things are going great or bad. But I
Right.
just feel that what I'm seeing out there is just it's not the same. It's just too much pushback, and I don't want to be this way because then she might take advantage, or he's gonna take advantage. And I just don't see that type of relationship anymore. And even friends that I have that are in there under 30,
Mm.
uh, the pursuit of a woman, courting, that seems like to be thrown out the window now. I guess
Mhm.
everybody's like expecting something, or it seems like it's more transactional
Mhm.
relationships now than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. Um,
Yeah.
do we blame social media for that?
I
Is
mean,
that the easy way out?
I think we can't forget the role of social media, right? In
Yeah,
our current like cultural landscape. Like, of
yeah.
course, we're going to be influenced by the messages that are online. But I think the other piece of this is like people like, okay, is there more transaction in relationship? Like, yeah, maybe. And I think a lot of times people get focused on like what they want from someone else
Yeah.
without ever considering what am I doing? What am I bringing to this relationship? We can be really other focused. Like, oh, are you a good fit for me? That's a fair question. We should be
Yeah,
asking that,
yeah, 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 yeah.
but we also need to ask ourselves, what am I bringing to this relationship? Am I good for this person? And I think sometimes we forget that like we have to do work too. It's not that just like I arrive as a relational being and you need to tend to every need I have, but rather like this is a mutual equitable exchange, right? So like I need to know what you need. I also need to know what I need. I need to communicate my needs, not make you guess them. I need you to communicate your needs. I shouldn't be guessing what your needs are, right? So it actually like takes both people again that like showing up 100% to do the work.
Yeah.
And I think if we don't move through some of the fear that we hold around like attachment wounds and rejection and abandonment, if we don't attend to those things that we hold inside of us, we're likely to project them onto our romantic relationships.
Well, I was going to, and it's funny because I wanted to segue into that. Is how often do we bring ourselves from yesterday into
Mhm.
today, or maybe tomorrow, because somebody we were with might have treated us bad, or we just it ended badly. I don't know, and
Yeah.
it, it, it's hard to like sometimes let go. And
Yep.
I've done that where
Hmm.
I couldn't let go, or I say, you know what, I don't want to date until I feel a certain way.
Sure.
I'm seeing now where couples are asking each other what you bring to the table. That's something that was never talked about
Right.
as little as 5 to 10 years ago. Now that's like the first question. Again, whether I'm reading an article or I'm seeing other podcasters, that seems like a normal question. Oh, what do you bring to the table?
Hmm.
Wow, what
Hmm.
that? Where do we go wrong?
I think it's great that people are wanting to have that conversation, and
Right.
like I mean to kind of
Like you said
your
before, no, I get what you're saying. Like, what can I bring? And yeah, no, I get
yeah.
that. It's just I feel that it's, to me personally. I'm older, so I never thought about that. As long
Hmm.
as you love me, we're together. And like you said, communicate what you
Right.
want, what I want. But it seems like it's the first question. What do you bring to the table?
Mm. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I maybe I'm old school. Maybe I'm too old school, Dr.
Well, so I'm
Danica.
in my 40s. I don't know how old you are. I'm in my
I'm in
40s,
my
and
early 60s.
okay. So what I will say is like even in my time of being like, I started dating as like a late teenager. So like even
Right.
in the last like 25 years of me being a partnered person or a dating person, I would say like dating looks different from in my lifetime too, like pretty significantly, right? And like,
Yeah.
but I even think about myself, like where I am today, if I'm seeking out a partner, that's really different at 42 than it was at 25, right? And
Yeah.
so some of this is just like, I think a natural progression of like our own development, and some of it is the cultural changes, I think for sure. But to your other point, like how often do we bring like yesterday into like today? I'm going to say
Mhm.
100% of the time. Now, that doesn't always mean it's a bad thing, because like there's things from my relational past from like 22-year-old self that like I still carry that inside of me, but I've done a lot of work on it. So like it actually like today I would say like, oh, well those experiences informed who I am as opposed to like I'm still acting from that wound, right? So like I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing that we take yesterday into today, but I do think we have to have recognition that like everywhere we go, there we are, and that includes every bit of us that's existed before this moment.
So do we need to get like, I guess the word I'm looking for, do we need to get smacked in reality to realize that my past self is not working? I've gone through a couple of relationships, and take that inner journey, like you said, maybe work on ourselves, and okay,
Mhm.
what is it that I did wrong? What was it? And I have friends that would tell me, and I wouldn't listen, Dr. Danica. I would
Yeah.
just, no, no, you're wrong. Until this one relationship like 6, 7 years ago, I remember walking away from it, and I'm walking towards the train station, and I said to myself, you know what? I excuse my language. I fucked up too much. This
Mm.
is what I need. What am I doing wrong? And taking that train ride, I'm in New York, so it's maybe like an hour train ride from where I was at to go into the city to
Uh-huh.
Manhattan. I remember just sitting there and just rehashing things. And old friends of mine would tell me certain things that I would just brush off, and all of a sudden it did just start, and it seems like I had an awakening because
Hmm.
I said to myself, "Oh, this is what I'm doing wrong. This
Yep.
is, I have to take blame.
Right.
I don't blame anybody for certain things that I've done. It's my fault. I'm the one that did it." So that's what I'm saying, Dr. Danica. Are people not taking enough stock of themselves to realize that maybe they could be the problem? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, what I'll tell you is I think that that's work all of us need to do is being able
Right.
to slow down and consider what is my role here. And
Yeah.
I mean, we could do that like in work relationships, dating relationships, friendships, family relationships. Like if we're talking about an adult to adult relationship where abuse and violence is not present. So I'm not talking
Right.
about when there's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
power control, right? If we're talking about like an equitable or reasonably equitable relationship, we should be considering not only how we're impacted by the other person, but also our role in the relationship and how we might be impacting them. And I think like to me, that's the richness. If we can consider how am I impacted and also how am I impacting,
Yeah.
then we have a better sense of ourselves as a relational being. And we then like we can better answer that question. Well, what are we bringing to the relationship? Well, I know what I'm bringing to the relationship if I know what my patterns are. and how
Mhm.
I'm going to attend to my patterns. Because that's, the truth of it is, we're all traumatized beings. We're all bringing that into our relationships all the time. And we're either going to connect with someone or collide with them. And we're going to have a lot more connection if we work on our patterns.
That's a great word, patterns. And it's funny because I wasn't recognizing mine, and I think that's
Hmm.
that's the main thing, right? Dr. Danica,
Yeah.
just recognizing it after a while, and I finally did, and then I realized, okay, people pleasing, not only whether it's girlfriends or
Right.
not, but certain friends and or a lot of people, and I'm like,
Yep.
boy, this is not getting me anywhere. I'm losing,
Exactly.
I'm losing all the time, and I'm feeling miserable.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's and and I discovered that 6 7 years ago, and I remember like I said, when I was taking that train to Manhattan, uh, from this was at the beginning of the summer or even before the summer. I remember, Dr. Danica, I worked on myself that whole 6 7 months, just reading, and just working on myself, saying, okay, this is what I got to change. And it was a hard change. It was
I
so
bet.
hard
Yeah.
because I'm used to doing something so much, but I said, this has got to be better for me. This is what I have to look out for
Right.
myself now.
Right. Right.
So if you could talk more about that, like
Yeah.
how
Well,
how do you say this is me now? Does that make sense?
oh yeah, for sure. Well, and I love your example here because what you're highlighting is like we can't change something we can't see, right? So
Right.
you slowing down and taking the time to be like, what is my pattern here? And I think the next thing being like, and does it serve me or not?
Yeah.
And what you were finding is it wasn't serving you.
Yeah.
And people pleasing, that is such an adaptive pattern that someone will take on when they feel like they've had to that can easily be established in intimate relationships, but a lot of times that pattern starts in childhood. Like, what parent was I
Hundred
needing to
percent.
please, right?
100
Yeah, and so
percent.
like then we carry that with us, which makes sense, and then at some point it's usually after some sort of collision
Yeah.
or relational rupture, we are able to like look at, oh wait, there's a pattern here. I've done this in all these relationships, and now all these relationships have ended, or I have a lot of resentment in these relationships, or I feel really unknown or really unseen. And it's like, okay, well, it's not just the fault of another person for not seeing me if I'm not showing up and being available, right? So if I
Yeah.
want intimacy and a connection, I have to be available for it, which means I can't be a people pleaser. I have to be present and available. And that's a really, and I see that with perfectionists too. And these are like super advantageous coping mechanisms. They're people like them, they like feel
Yeah.
good. They win us favors in relationships, but they don't create depth and intimacy. So if we want sustainability in relationships, we have to break those patterns and start showing up as our full selves.
No, I definitely agree. Well, first of all, Dr. Danica, I want to thank you so much for being on People on Dating. I could probably talk to you for another hour. Before I let you go, anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to promote? Any Oprah, planning visits? Any book tours? Anything that we should be ready for?
Yeah, yeah. I wish I had something that exciting to share, but I will say, I think my company, my practice, Empowered Healing Dallas, I think that we offer really great trauma-informed therapeutic support for folks all over the U.S. And then my other business, you can find me on the Empowered Therapist on Instagram. I share lots of free resources there. I've got a weekly newsletter. Folks can get a little bit deeper into some of the work. And then, of course, we have other offerings there as well, sometimes healing-focused retreats. And yeah, happy for folks to connect and be part of this broader conversation of like focusing on yourself and your self healing so that you can get the relationships you really want out of your life.
No, definitely 100%. Say that website one more time.
Yeah, it's the Empowered Therapist is one of the businesses, and the other one is Empowered Healing Dallas.
All right, yeah, I'll definitely put that in the show notes. And before I let you go, one last word about finding healthy and safe relationships.
Tend to the relationship you have with yourself, and you will be more available for healthy and safe relationships outside of you.
Wow, that was deep. Well, again, Dr. Danica, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on People on Dating. I really appreciate
Sure, thanks for having me.
it. My pleasure.